My name is Leonard Walker, 67 years old and recently retired from a long career in civil engineering. 15 years have passed since Martha left me for her boss, but last week I received news that shocked me to my core. My ex-wife died of cancer and inexplicably left me her old house in the countryside. My son Thomas, living in his luxury Seattle condo, laughed when he heard. "Enjoy your broken house, Dad," he said mockingly. I never expected what I would find when I turned the key. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe to join me on this journey of discovery that completely transformed my lonely retirement into something I never imagined possible. After the divorce, my life settled into a predictable routine. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Portland. Nothing fancy, but it was enough for a man living alone. My days consisted of morning coffee on my small balcony, occasional fishing trips, and weekly chess games at the community center with other retirees. The apartment walls were thin, and sometimes I could hear my neighbors arguing or their television blaring through the night. I never complained. The emptiness of my own place seemed more noticeable in the silence. Martha and I had been married for 35 years before she left. We met in college, both of us studying engineering, though she never finished her degree. She supported me through my early career struggles, moved with me across 3 states for various job opportunities, and raised our son while I worked long hours designing bridges and municipal buildings. I thought we were happy, or at least content in the comfortable life we had built together. Then came that Tuesday in April, 15 years ago. I still remember the sound of her suitcases being dragged across our hardwood floors. "I deserve more than this, Leonard," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Richard appreciates my potential." Richard was her boss at the real estate firm, where she had started working part-time after Thomas left for college. He was younger than me, wealthier, more charming at parties, the type of man who remembered birthdays without being reminded and bought spontaneous gifts for no reason. The divorce was quick but painful. Martha got the house we had lived in for 20 years, most of our savings, and, it seemed, custody of our son's loyalty. Thomas was 25 when it happened, already establishing himself in the tech industry in Seattle. He had always been closer to his mother, but I never expected him to take sides so definitively. "Dad, you were never there," he told me during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "Mom sacrificed everything for your career, and you took her for granted." His words stung because there was a grain of truth in them. I had been absent from many of his school events, focused on establishing my reputation in the engineering community. By the time I had achieved enough success to ease back on work hours, he was already grown and harboring resentments I hadn't noticed forming. After the divorce, I threw myself into my work with even greater intensity. I became known for my innovative bridge designs that balanced aesthetic beauty with practical durability. Several of my projects won awards, but there was no one waiting at home to celebrate with me. Martha had moved to California with Richard, and Thomas visited them for holidays. I received obligatory birthday calls and generic Christmas cards signed by his assistant. Retirement hit me harder than I expected. Without blueprints and deadlines to structure my days, time stretched emptily before me. I tried volunteering at a local school, teaching kids about engineering principles, but found myself awkward around children who reminded me of the grandfather role I wasn't playing in my son's life. He and his wife had 2 children I had only met twice, so when the letter arrived from Martha's lawyer, I initially thought it was some final paperwork related to her estate. We had maintained minimal contact over the years, mostly through intermediaries. I knew she had divorced Richard about 5 years after leaving me, but beyond that, her life had become a mystery. The news of her death came as a shock, not because I still harbored romantic feelings, but because it severed the last thread connecting me to my former life. The letter was formal, but contained an unexpected personal note from Martha's lawyer, a woman named Patricia Kendall, who wrote that she had been not just Martha's attorney but also her friend. "Mrs. Winters specifically requested that this property be transferred directly to you, Mr. Walker," the letter stated. "She was most insistent that you visit the property yourself before making any decisions about its disposition." An address was listed for a house in a small town called Millfield, about 3 hours from Portland. I had never heard Martha mention owning property there. A quick internet search showed it was a rural community known primarily for its apple orchards and a small arts community. I called Thomas that evening, curious if he knew anything about this mysterious house. "Oh, that old place," he said, the disdain clear in his voice even over the phone. "Mom bought it after she left Richard. Some kind of midlife crisis retreat or whatever." I could hear the sounds of his expensive life in the background, the tinkling of ice and crystal, the murmur of his wife talking to what was probably their housekeeper. "Have you seen it?" I asked. "Once, years ago. It's a complete dump, Dad. Falling apart Victorian in the middle of nowhere. I told her to sell it, but she had some sentimental attachment to the place." He paused, and I could almost see him shaking his head. "I can't believe she left it to you. Must be her idea of a joke." "What do you mean?" "Well, it's worthless, obviously. Probably cost more to fix than it's worth. She left everything else to me and the kids, so I guess she figured you could have the broken house." He laughed, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. My son's laugh used to be warm and infectious. "Enjoy your broken house, Dad." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, looking at the water stain on my ceiling that the landlord had promised to fix months ago. Thomas's life was filled with luxuries I had never prioritized. His condo overlooking Puget Sound, his European vacations, his children in private schools. Somehow, my decades of hard work and careful saving had translated into a retirement of modest means, while my son, who worked in an industry I barely understood, lived like royalty. That night, I packed an overnight bag, left a note for my neighbor to collect my mail, and got in my 10-year-old Toyota. I needed to see this house for myself, not because I expected anything valuable, but because it was the last connection to Martha, to the life I had lost, and perhaps to understanding why she would leave me this final, puzzling bequest. The drive from Portland to Millfield took longer than the navigation app on my phone suggested. Construction delayed me for nearly an hour outside of Salem, and then I missed a poorly marked turn that added another 20 minutes to the journey. It was early afternoon when I finally left the highway for the 2-lane country roads that led to the small town. The landscape changed from suburban sprawl to rolling farmland, with mountains visible on the horizon. Spring had painted the fields in vibrant greens, and wildflowers dotted the roadside. I rolled down my window, letting the fresh air replace the car's stale air conditioning. The scent of recent rain and growing things reminded me of road trips Martha and I had taken early in our marriage, when we were too poor for fancy hotels and would drive to state parks for weekend camping adventures. Those had been good years, simple years. Martha laughing as she tried to help me set up a tent, both of us getting soaked in sudden downpours, making love in our sleeping bags, while owls hooted in nearby trees. She had been my best friend then, my partner in everything. When exactly had that changed? Had it been sudden, or so gradual that I never noticed the growing distance until she was already gone? I remembered our 5th anniversary, when I surprised her with a picnic at the site of my first bridge project. She had been so proud, taking photos of me standing beside the plaque bearing my name among the design team. "My husband built this," she told a passing stranger, her arm linked through mine. "People will cross this bridge for 100 years. The memory shifted to our 20th anniversary, when I had to cancel our dinner reservations because of a project deadline. I sent flowers to apologize. Did she put them in water or throw them away? I couldn't remember. There were so many moments I couldn't recall. Moments when perhaps she had needed me and I had been absent in body or mind. Then there was the last time I saw her, at Thomas's wedding 8 years ago. We had been civil, exchanging pleasantries about the ceremony and the young couple. She looked older, of course, but still beautiful in her mother-of-the-groom dress. There had been a moment, just before the reception ended, when our eyes met across the room, and something passed between us. Not regret exactly, but recognition of all we had shared and lost. "You look well, Leonard," she had said when we found ourselves alone briefly near the coat check. "So do you, Martha," I replied. "Are you happy?" She had hesitated before answering, her fingers playing with the pendant at her throat, a silver bridge charm I had given her decades earlier. I was surprised she still wore it. "I'm content," she finally said. "And you?" I had nodded, not trusting myself to speak the truth. We both knew contentment wasn't happiness, but perhaps it was enough. The GPS announced that I was approaching Millfield, pulling me from my memories. The town appeared suddenly around a bend in the road, a small main street lined with brick buildings dating from the early 20th century. A white church steeple rising above the tree line, American flags hanging from lampposts. I stopped at a diner called Ruby's, its neon coffee cup sign flickering in the afternoon light. My stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten since a quick breakfast at a gas station hours earlier. The diner was nearly empty at 3 in the afternoon, just a couple of older men at the counter and a family with young children in a corner booth. The waitress who approached my table had gray streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and a name tag that read Barbara. "Just passing through?" she asked as she poured coffee without waiting for me to request it. "Actually, I'm here about a house," I said, pulling out the letter with the address. "My ex-wife owned property here, and I've inherited it." Barbara's expression changed subtly, her casual friendliness replaced by curiosity. "You're Martha's ex-husband?" I blinked in surprise. "You knew her?" "Small town," she said with a shrug, but her eyes were assessing me with new interest. Everyone knew Martha. She wasn't around all the time, but when she was, she became part of the community. I had no idea she spent time here. "We haven't been in contact for years." Barbara nodded as if this confirmed something. "She moved here about 10 years ago, after her second marriage ended. Not full-time at first, but eventually she was here more than she was away." She glanced toward the old men at the counter who were clearly eavesdropping. "Frank, this is Martha Winter's ex-husband." The taller of the two men turned on his stool. "Leonard?" he asked, surprising me further. "Yes," I admitted, increasingly puzzled. "Did everyone here know my ex-wife?" "She talked about you," Frank said. "Showed us pictures of the bridges you built." He squinted at me. "You going up to the house now?" "That's the plan. Though from what my son tells me, it's not in great shape." The three locals exchanged glances that I couldn't interpret. Barbara put down her coffee pot and placed a menu in front of me. "Order something to eat first," she suggested. "And maybe don't put too much stock in what your son said about the place." "Thomas only visited once," I acknowledged. "But he seemed pretty certain it was falling apart." Frank snorted. "That boy never saw what was right in front of him," he muttered, turning back to his coffee. I ordered a sandwich and tried to make conversation about the town, but the locals seemed reluctant to tell me more about Martha or the house. Their cryptic comments and knowing looks only increased my curiosity. What exactly had my ex-wife been doing in this small town? And why had she left me a house that apparently meant something to the community? After finishing my meal and getting directions to the property, I drove through the town and into the surrounding countryside. The road climbed gently into wooded hills before descending into a valley where apple orchards stretched in neat rows. According to my GPS, the house was just ahead, around the next bend. I slowed as I approached, suddenly nervous about what I would find. The property came into view gradually. First a stone wall partially hidden by overgrown bushes, then an open gate leading to a tree-lined drive. At the end of the drive stood a large Victorian house, its paint peeling and shutters hanging askew. The front porch sagged slightly on one side, and ivy climbed unchecked up the western wall. My son had been right about one thing. The place looked neglected from the outside. I parked beside a detached garage, whose doors were secured with a rusty chain and padlock. As I stepped out of my car, the silence of the countryside enveloped me. No traffic noise, no neighbors, just the sound of birds and the distant rushing of what might be a stream somewhere on the property. I stood looking at the house that had been Martha's final home, wondering what secrets it held and why she had chosen to leave it to me. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I approached the house. Up close, the neglect was even more apparent. The once white paint had faded to a dingy gray and peeled away in large flakes. Several wooden steps leading up to the porch creaked ominously under my weight, and I tested each one before trusting it with my full weight. The porch itself seemed solid enough despite its slight slant. I stood before the heavy wooden door, with its tarnished brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. No doorbell was visible. I raised my hand to knock, then felt foolish. There was no one inside to answer. The house had been empty since Martha's death, according to the lawyer's letter. Martha had always kept spare keys hidden around our old house, under flower pots, above door frames, inside fake rocks that looked too perfect to be natural. I ran my fingers along the top of the door frame and felt nothing. Checked under the threadbare welcome mat. Nothing. Finally, I noticed a loose brick in the porch wall. When I wiggled it free, a small, tarnished key lay in the cavity behind it. "Predictable as always, Martha," I murmured, feeling an unexpected wave of nostalgia for her familiar habits. The key stuck in the lock at first, requiring some jiggling before it turned with a reluctant groan of metal against metal. The door swung inward on protesting hinges, revealing a dim interior that smelled of dust and disuse. I stepped inside cautiously, letting my eyes adjust to the gloom. The entryway had a high ceiling, with a cobweb-covered chandelier hanging from an ornate plaster medallion. A curved staircase, with an intricately carved banister, led to the second floor. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight filtering through dirty windows. To my right, a formal living room contained furniture draped with white sheets, like ghosts of a former life. To my left, what appeared to be a dining room stood empty except for a massive oak table surrounded by 8 chairs, all covered in a thick layer of dust. I moved further into the house, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The kitchen at the back of the house looked like something from the 1950s, with avocado green appliances and linoleum flooring curling at the edges. A dead plant sat in a pot on the windowsill, its dried leaves crumbling when I touched them. "What were you thinking, Martha?" I said aloud, my voice sounding strange in the empty house. I continued my exploration, finding a small study off the kitchen with empty bookshelves and a desk containing nothing but old utility bills. A downstairs bathroom had a clawfoot tub with rust stains and a toilet that made alarming noises when I flushed it experimentally. Upstairs, I found 4 bedrooms, each with minimal furniture. The master bedroom contained a queen-sized bed with a sagging mattress and a dresser with 1 drawer missing. The closet held a few outdated women's clothes on wire hangers. Nothing of real value, nothing personal. As I moved from room to room, my initial curiosity gave way to disappointment. Thomas had been right. The place was a dump, probably worth something for the land it sat on, but the house itself would require extensive renovation to be livable. Yet something about it all felt wrong. Why would Martha, who had always been house-proud, live in such conditions? The Martha I knew would never have let a place deteriorate this way. And why would the locals speak of her with such fondness if she had been the eccentric owner of a rundown property? In one of the smaller bedrooms, I found a cardboard box containing photo albums. Sitting on the dusty floor, I opened the top one and felt my breath catch. There were photographs of Martha and me in our younger days, our wedding, the purchase of our first house, Thomas as a baby in Martha's arms with me hovering proudly nearby. Later pictures showed Martha alone or with people I didn't recognize, townsfolk from Millfield, I assumed. She looked older but vibrant, smiling genuinely in a way I hadn't seen in the later years of our marriage. In several photos, she stood in front of this very house, but it looked different, well-maintained with fresh paint and flowering shrubs around the porch. These pictures couldn't be more than a few years old based on Martha's appearance. What had happened to the house since then? Why had she let it fall into disrepair? My phone rang, startling me in the quiet house. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. "So did you see it?" he asked without preamble when I answered. "I'm here now," I replied, closing the photo album. "Pretty bad, right? I told you it was a waste of time." "It needs work," I admitted, "but the structure seems sound." I wasn't sure why I felt defensive about the house. Thomas laughed. "Right. Because you're such an expert on houses. Dad, the place is a teardown. Just sell it to a developer and be done with it." "I just got here, Thomas. I'll take some time to assess things properly." "Whatever. Just don't sink your retirement fund into that money pit. Not that you have much of one anyway." His casual cruelty stung more than I wanted to admit. When had my son become so dismissive of me? So materialistic? "I'll make my own decisions," I said stiffly. "Fine. Call me when you come to your senses." He hung up without saying goodbye. I put my phone away, feeling the familiar ache of distance between us. Over the years, I had made many attempts to bridge the gap with Thomas, attending his college graduation despite Martha asking me to stay away, sending thoughtful gifts for his wedding, making the effort to visit Seattle twice a year, even when he barely made time to see me. Nothing seemed to penetrate the wall he had built between us. Outside, the light was fading. I hadn't planned where to stay for the night, assuming I would drive back to Portland or find a motel in Millfield. But something made me reluctant to leave the house just yet. Despite its dilapidated state, it held pieces of Martha's life, and by extension, pieces of my own past. I found sheets that seemed clean in a hallway linen closet and made up the master bedroom bed. There was no electricity. The bills in the desk had shown the service disconnected months ago, but I had a flashlight in my overnight bag and the water still ran, though it came out brown at first before clearing. I decided to stay the night in my ex-wife's house. Perhaps in the morning, in better light, I could make sense of this strange inheritance and why Martha had wanted me to have it. I awoke to unfamiliar darkness, momentarily disoriented until I remembered where I was. The digital display on my watch showed 3:17 in the morning. Something had disturbed my sleep, a sound different from the normal creaks and settles of an old house. I lay still, listening intently. There it was again, a faint mechanical whirring followed by a click, like a timer or thermostat activating. But that was impossible in a house with no electricity. Grabbing my flashlight, I swung my legs off the bed and stood cautiously. The sound seemed to be coming from somewhere below. I made my way down the stairs, testing each step carefully in the darkness. The beam of my flashlight cast long, distorted shadows on the walls. The sound led me to a hallway I had explored earlier. Nothing had seemed unusual about it during the day, just a narrow passage connecting the kitchen to a small powder room. Now, focusing my attention, I noticed a door I had overlooked. It was the same color as the wall, with no trim to distinguish it, located in a shadowed alcove. I tried the handle, but it was locked. The mechanical sound came again, definitely from behind this door. My heart rate quickened with uncertainty and curiosity. The key from the brick outside wouldn't fit this lock. I tried several likely hiding spots before remembering the jewelry box I had found in Martha's dresser upstairs. It had contained only costume jewelry of little value, but perhaps. Back in the bedroom, I opened the small wooden box and emptied its contents onto the bed. Among the tarnished earrings and beaded necklaces was a small brass key I hadn't noticed before. It looked old-fashioned, the kind that might open a diary or a keepsake box. I hurried back to the hidden door, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly with each step. The key slid into the lock smoothly, as if it had been recently oiled. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door swung inward to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The stairs were concrete, not wooden like the rest of the house, and felt solid underfoot. At the bottom was another door, this one metal with a modern keypad lock. The mechanical sound came from behind it, louder now. The keypad glowed green in the darkness, so there was electricity down here after all. But what would be the code? I tried Martha's birthday. Access denied. Our anniversary date. Denied again. Finally, on a hunch, I entered the date Thomas was born. The lock disengaged with a soft beep, and the door opened automatically, revealing a space so unexpected I nearly dropped my flashlight. Before me was a large, well-lit room that looked like a combination of an architect's studio and an engineer's workshop. Drafting tables lined one wall, covered with blueprints and technical drawings. The opposite wall held glass display cases containing intricate scale models of buildings and bridges. A large work table in the center held computers and what appeared to be 3D printing equipment. But what truly took my breath away were the walls themselves. They were covered with framed drawings and photographs of my work, bridges I had designed, buildings I had helped create, even sketches from my college notebooks that I thought had been lost decades ago. And there were more, designs I had created but never built, concepts rejected by clients as too ambitious or experimental, ideas I had abandoned when practical considerations demanded more conventional approaches. One entire section was dedicated to a pedestrian bridge I had designed for a university campus competition 15 years ago. My design had placed second, losing to a more conservative proposal. I had been heartbroken at the time, believing my concept to be superior in both form and function. Here was not just my original design, but iterations of it, refined, improved, structurally enhanced versions that addressed every weakness of my initial concept. In a daze, I moved around the room, touching the displays with trembling fingers. Every project I had ever cared about was here, preserved and expanded upon. And beside many of them were notes in Martha's familiar handwriting, questions, suggestions, references to engineering journals. On a bookshelf, I found journals, dozens of them, each labeled with a year. I pulled one at random from 5 years ago and opened it to find Martha's neat handwriting filling the pages. She wrote about my designs, about consulting with engineers to understand the technical aspects better, about her efforts to interest construction firms in my unrealized concepts. Leonard's suspension bridge design for the river crossing would reduce environmental impact by 60% compared to the approved design. One entry read, "Sent the revised stress calculations to Professor Abernathy at MIT for review. He agrees that Leonard's approach is viable and innovative." I sat heavily in a nearby chair, overwhelmed. Martha had been studying my work, championing my designs, improving upon my ideas, all without my knowledge. But why? A more recent journal caught my eye, dated just last year. The handwriting was shakier but still recognizable. Received diagnosis today. Terminal. 6 months to a year. Need to accelerate the foundation plans. Leonard deserves to see his vision realized. My throat tightened with emotion. Martha had been dying, yet still focused on this shrine to my work. On the main desk sat a sealed envelope with my name written on it in Martha's handwriting. With unsteady hands, I opened it and began to read. "My dear Leonard, if you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth about the house and about how I've spent these past 10 years. I owe you an explanation, though it may come too late for forgiveness. Leaving you was the greatest mistake of my life. I realized it almost immediately, but pride kept me from admitting it. Then shame, then simply the passage of time making it seem impossible to bridge the gap between us. When my marriage to Richard ended, I found myself questioning every decision I had made. In therapy, yes, your practical Martha in therapy, I came to understand that I had left you not because you neglected me, but because I had lost my sense of purpose. Supporting your career had been my life's work, but somewhere along the way, I convinced myself it wasn't enough. I bought this house in Millfield to be close to my sister without actually having to live with her. It was run down even then, and fixing it up gave me something to do. One day, while cleaning the basement, I had an idea. If I couldn't be your partner in life anymore, perhaps I could still be your partner in legacy. I began collecting your work, contacting former clients, professors, colleagues. I studied engineering so I could understand your designs better. The more I learned, the more I recognized your genius. So many of your ideas were ahead of their time, Leonard. Projects rejected as too experimental 20 years ago are now feasible with modern materials and techniques. Over time, this became more than a hobby. I established contacts with construction firms and architecture schools. The Leonard Walker Foundation exists on paper, ready to be activated. There is money set aside, my inheritance from my parents, plus prudent investments, enough to fund scholarships and prototype development. The house itself is not what it appears. The dilapidated exterior is largely cosmetic, designed to discourage curiosity and keep property taxes low. The real house lies behind hidden panels and beneath carefully crafted facades. In the master bedroom closet, behind the hanging clothes, you'll find a control panel. The code is Thomas's birthday, followed by the pound sign. This will reveal the house as it actually exists. Modern, comfortable, and designed to showcase your work. I'm sorry for the deception, but I wanted you to discover this place slowly, to understand what I've been trying to do. And yes, I wanted to keep it from Thomas, who values only material success and would have sold everything without understanding its significance. I don't ask for forgiveness, Leonard, but I do ask that you consider continuing what I've started. Your designs deserve to be built. Your ideas deserve recognition. I never stopped loving you. Martha. I read the letter twice more, tears blurring my vision. Then I returned to the master bedroom and found the hidden panel in the closet. When I entered the code, The house seemed to come alive around me. Lights activated throughout the building. Hidden doors slid open to reveal modern rooms behind shabby facades. The sagging porch straightened as hydraulic supports engaged. By dawn, I had explored the true house behind the deliberate disguise. Every room contained surprises, state-of-the-art kitchen appliances hidden behind vintage facades, modern bathroom fixtures concealed by removable panels, comfortable furniture under dusty slipcovers. Even the peeling paint outside was a special material designed to look decrepit while protecting the structure underneath. Martha had created a mirage, a house that appeared worthless to casual observers but contained immense value within, just as she had recognized the unrealized value in my abandoned designs. As the sun rose, I sat in what was now a beautiful solarium, overlooking an overgrown but structurally planned garden. My ex-wife, the woman I had failed to truly know during 35 years of marriage, had spent the last decade of her life preserving and championing my legacy, and now she had given me a second chance to bring those designs to life. The morning light streamed through windows that had automatically cleaned themselves overnight, part of the house's hidden systems. I sat at the kitchen island, drinking coffee from a machine that had activated at precisely 6:30, apparently programmed to Martha's preferred wake-up time. The modern kitchen gleamed with stainless steel and polished granite beneath what had appeared yesterday to be peeling wallpaper and cracked linoleum. I spread Martha's letter before me, along with financial documents I had found in a hidden safe behind the study bookshelf. The extent of her planning was staggering. She had not only collected and refined my designs, but had quietly built connections with people who could bring them to life. There were letters from engineering firms expressing interest in my innovative approach to suspension bridge supports, emails from sustainable architecture groups praising my concepts for energy-efficient public buildings, even a letter from the university that had rejected my pedestrian bridge 15 years ago, indicating they were reconsidering the project with updated materials. The financial records showed Martha had been methodical and strategic. She had invested her divorce settlement from Richard wisely, growing it substantially over the years. She had also received an inheritance when her parents passed away, which she had put entirely toward establishing the Leonard Walker Foundation. According to the documents, the foundation already existed legally with Martha as the sole director. A succession plan named me as her replacement. There were funds for operations, for prototypes, for scholarships to engineering students, specializing in bridge design. Another file contained detailed information about the house itself. The property encompassed 20 acres, including the apple orchard visible from the road and a stream running along the back boundary. The house renovation had been done in phases over 8 years, with most of the work focused on creating the hidden workshop and modernizing systems while maintaining the dilapidated exterior appearance. Property tax records showed the house assessed at a fraction of its true value due to its apparent condition. Martha had been paying minimal taxes while creating a multi-million-dollar property behind the facade. I found records of my son's single visit 3 years ago. Martha had deliberately maintained the house's decrepit appearance, keeping all modern features hidden during his stay. Notes in her journal indicated Thomas had spent less than an hour at the property, refusing her offer of lunch, dismissing the house as a worthless money pit before returning to his hotel in Portland. "He looks at surfaces only," Martha had written. "He sees what he expects to see." Had I been the same? Had I seen only what I expected in Martha, the supportive wife, the practical homemaker, missing the depth of her intelligence and vision? Had I underestimated her just as Thomas had underestimated this house? My phone rang, interrupting these painful reflections. It was Patricia Kendall, Martha's lawyer. "Mr. Walker, I'm calling to check if you found the house and if you need any assistance." "I found more than a house, Miss Kendall," I replied. "I found Martha's life work." "So you discovered the workshop," she said, sounding relieved. "Martha was concerned you might not look beyond the surface. She made me promise to call if we hadn't heard from you within 48 hours. You knew about all this, the foundation, the designs, the house's true condition." I helped her set up the legal framework for the foundation and advised on the property tax situation, she acknowledged. Martha was determined. Once she committed to preserving your work, nothing could dissuade her. But why not tell me while she was alive? We could have reconciled, worked together. There was a pause before Patricia answered. She tried to reach out several times over the years. She sent letters that were returned unopened, called your office but couldn't get past your assistant. I had no memory of any attempted contact, but it was possible. After the divorce, I had instructed my office to screen calls and return any correspondence from Martha, a defensive measure to protect my wounded pride. The cancer diagnosis changed her timeline, Patricia continued. She had hoped to complete more of the foundation work before involving you. When she learned she had limited time, she updated her will and prepared everything for you to continue, including the instructions on how to reveal the true house, I murmured. Exactly. Martha believed that discovering it yourself would help you understand her intentions better than if she simply told you. Patricia paused again. She regretted many things, Mr. Walker, but her work on your designs brought her joy in her final years. I hope you can appreciate that. After we hung up, I spent hours going through more of Martha's journals and files. The picture that emerged was of a woman who had found her purpose in championing my unrealized vision. She had educated herself about engineering principles, consulted with experts, built a network of supporters for my designs. In her last journal entries, as her health declined, she wrote about her hopes for what I would do with her legacy. Leonard will understand once he sees everything she had written just 2 months before her death. He has always been able to recognize good design. He will see that this was my attempt to make amends, to give back what my leaving took from him, the chance to see his most innovative work brought to life. That evening, I used the house's hidden systems to transform it from its neglected disguise to its true form. Exterior panels shifted to reveal well-maintained siding beneath the peeling paint. The sagging porch straightened as hydraulic supports engaged. Shutters righted themselves, and hidden lighting illuminated the landscaping that had been designed to appear overgrown, but was actually carefully planned for low-maintenance beauty. Standing in the driveway, looking at the transformed house glowing in the twilight, I finally understood Martha's message completely. Like this house, my designs had hidden value beneath an overlooked exterior, and like this house, they deserved to be revealed in their true form. I took out my phone and called my son. Thomas, I'd like you to come see the house, I said when he answered. Dad, I told you it's not worth your time, he sighed. I think you should see it for yourself. I'll pay for your flight. I have meetings all week. He hedged. This weekend, then. It's important. Something in my voice must have conveyed my seriousness, because after a brief silence, he agreed. Fine, Saturday morning. But I'm not staying overnight in that dump. Just come, I said. I think you'll be surprised. I ended the call and looked back at the house, Martha's final gift and challenge to me. She had spent a decade preparing for this moment, creating the foundation that would allow my designs to become reality. Now it was my turn to build upon what she had begun. Inside the workshop, I spread out the blueprints for my favorite unrealized design, a pedestrian bridge that incorporated renewable energy generation into its structure. Martha had refined the concept, addressing the structural issues that had concerned the original review committee. According to her notes, materials that didn't exist when I first designed it were now available, making the project not just possible but practical. For the first time in years, I felt the excitement of creation stirring within me, not just to build bridges across rivers, but perhaps to build a bridge across time, connecting my past work to future possibilities, and maybe even reconnecting with my son in the process. The next few days passed in a blur of discovery and planning. I contacted the firms Martha had been working with, introducing myself as the new director of the Leonard Walker Foundation. Most were surprised to hear from me directly, but expressed enthusiasm about the projects Martha had discussed with them. Professor Abernathy from MIT, who had consulted with Martha on the technical aspects of my designs, called me after receiving my email. I always wondered when you would get involved, Leonard, he said. Your ex-wife was remarkably dedicated to your work. I told her several times that she should contact you directly, but she insisted the timing wasn't right. I wish she had, I said, the regret still fresh. We could have collaborated. In a way, you did. Your designs, her advocacy, and now you can take it forward. With the professor's guidance, I identified 3 projects that could be implemented relatively quickly. The university pedestrian bridge that had been my personal favorite, a renewable energy installation for a public building in Portland, and a small footbridge for a nature preserve that incorporated my ideas for minimal environmental impact. I also began exploring the town of Millfield more thoroughly, introducing myself to the locals who had known Martha. Their initial wariness gave way to acceptance as they realized I appreciated what Martha had been trying to do. Frank, the man from the diner, turned out to be a retired contractor who had helped with some of the house renovations. Martha was clear about keeping the outside looking rough, he told me as we walked the property together. Said it was important that certain people thought the place was worthless. My son, I acknowledged. Frank nodded. She never said it outright, but that was my impression. She worried about him selling everything off if he inherited it. She was probably right about that, I admitted. The community had embraced Martha despite her unusual project, or perhaps because of it. She had become part of local committees, donated to the town library, and hired local workers for the house renovations. In return, they had respected her privacy and her peculiar request to maintain the fiction of a rundown house. I decided the facade had served its purpose. It was time for the house to reflect its true nature, just as it was time for my designs to be realized. I hired Frank to assemble a crew to restore the exterior properly, but asked him to wait until after Thomas's visit that weekend. On Saturday morning, I drove to Portland to pick up my son from the airport. He emerged from the terminal looking every inch the successful tech executive, expensive suit, designer luggage, impatient expression as he scanned the arrival area. "Dad," he nodded when he spotted me. "This better be worth missing my golf game." I bit back a sharp response. "Good to see you too, Thomas. How was your flight?" The drive back to Millfield was filled with Thomas's monologues about his recent business successes, his children's private school achievements, and his wife's charity work. He asked no questions about my life or about Martha's house. As we approached the property, I deliberately drove slowly down the tree-lined drive, giving him time to observe the still dilapidated exterior. I had returned the house to its disguise mode, hiding all the modern features beneath the shabby facade. "Wow, it looks even worse than I remembered," Thomas remarked, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Seriously, Dad, what are you going to do with this place? It would cost a fortune to fix it up. And for what? It's in the middle of nowhere. Let's go inside before you make up your mind," I suggested mildly. Thomas followed me up the creaking steps, his expensive shoes looking out of place on the weathered porch. I unlocked the door and let him enter first. His expression of distaste deepened as he took in the dusty entryway and sheet-covered furniture visible in the living room. "This is what Mom left you?" "What a joke," he said, shaking his head. "I got the investment portfolio and vacation property in Palm Springs, and you got this." "Martha and I had different definitions of value," I replied. "Let me show you around." I led him through the seemingly decrepit house, watching him grow increasingly impatient and condescending. He made no effort to hide his assessment that I had been left a worthless burden while he had received everything of actual value. "Look, Dad, I have a flight back tomorrow morning," he finally said as we stood in the kitchen with its apparently outdated appliances and peeling wallpaper. "I've seen enough. If you want my advice, sell this place for land value and be done with it." "I have one more thing to show you," I said, leading him to the hallway with the hidden door. "Another musty bedroom? No thanks. Humor me." I opened the door to reveal the staircase descending to the workshop. Thomas frowned but followed me down the stairs to the metal door with its keypad. I entered the code, and the door slid open silently. My son's reaction was everything I could have hoped for. His mouth actually dropped open as he took in the state-of-the-art workshop with its displays of my designs, the computer workstations, and the scale models in their glass cases. "What the hell is this place?" he asked, his voice hushed for the first time that day. "This is what your mother was really doing for the past 10 years, I explained. Collecting my work, improving it, creating a foundation to make it reality. I showed him the drawings, the models, the journals. I explained Martha's vision for the Leonard Walker Foundation and the projects already in development. Throughout my explanation, Thomas remained uncharacteristically silent, moving from display to display with growing confusion and, perhaps, the beginnings of understanding. "But why would she do all this?" he finally asked. Why keep it secret? Why make the house look like crap? She had her reasons, I said, leading him back upstairs. One more surprise. In the master bedroom, I opened the closet and revealed the control panel. Thomas watched in astonishment as I entered the code and the house began to transform around us. Hidden lights came on, revealing the true quality of the furnishings beneath their dusty coverings. The kitchen fixtures changed as panels slid away. Modern entertainment systems emerged from behind false walls. We ended up on the back patio, which had changed from a rotting wooden deck to a beautiful stone terrace overlooking gardens that were illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. The sound of water came from a small fountain that had activated with the house systems. I don't understand, Thomas said, staring at the transformed property. Mom lived like this, but made it look like a dump to everyone else. Why? She wanted to protect what she considered valuable, I explained. She knew that to some people, like you, the house would seem worthless if judged by its appearance. She was concerned that after her death, someone might sell it without understanding what it contained. Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. You mean me? She thought I would sell it without looking deeper. I nodded. And based on your reaction today, she wasn't wrong. My son fell silent, considering this. Finally, he asked, so all these years, while I thought she was living in reduced circumstances, she was actually creating what? A shrine to your work? Not a shrine, I corrected him. A foundation, a way to bring innovative designs to life. A legacy. But what about her legacy? What about what she wanted? This is what she wanted, Thomas. Read her journals if you don't believe me. She found purpose in this project. We stayed up late that night, Thomas asking questions about my designs and about Martha's work in ways he never had before. For the first time in years, my son seemed to see me not as a disappointing father who hadn't achieved enough material success, but as an engineer with ideas worth preserving. In the morning, when it was time to drive him back to the airport, he hesitated before getting into the car. I misjudged the house, he admitted. And maybe I misjudged some other things too. It wasn't an apology, but from Thomas, it was significant. A crack in the wall between us, a small opening that might widen with time. You're welcome to visit again, I offered. Bring the grandkids next time. I think they'd enjoy exploring the property. He nodded, not committing but not refusing either. It was a start. After dropping Thomas at the airport, I returned to Millfield with renewed determination. I called Frank and told him to begin the exterior restoration immediately. It was time for the house to reflect its true nature, just as it was time for me to step into the role Martha had prepared for me. Within days, work crews swarmed the property, removing the false peeling paint, repairing the deliberately damaged shutters, straightening the porch that had never actually been sagging. The locals drove by slowly, watching with approval as the house's disguise was finally removed. In Martha's workshop, I began refining her already excellent improvements to my designs. Working with Professor Abernathy and the engineering firm she had contacted, I moved forward with plans to build the pedestrian bridge that had been my favorite unrealized project. For the first time since retirement, I felt truly alive again. Not just surviving, but creating, contributing, building. Martha had given me back my purpose along with a second chance to see my most innovative ideas become reality. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Spring turned to summer and then to fall, bringing vibrant changes to the property as the gardens flourished under professional care. The house stood proudly revealed in its true form, a beautiful Victorian with modern amenities, tastefully integrated into its historic character. The Leonard Walker Foundation was officially operational, with me as director and a board consisting of engineering professors, architects, and construction experts who shared our vision of innovative and sustainable design. The university pedestrian bridge was under construction, with completion expected the following spring. 2 other projects had moved from concept to planning stages, with funding secured and permits in process. Most surprisingly, Thomas had begun to change. After his initial visit, he returned twice, once alone and once with his family. His children, my grandchildren, explored the property with delight, fishing in the stream and picking apples in the orchard. During these visits, Thomas asked thoughtful questions about the foundation and about my design philosophy. He even offered to help with the foundation's website and digital presence, bringing his tech expertise to the project. Mom would have appreciated the irony, he commented during his last visit. She kept all this from me because she thought I wouldn't value it, and now I'm helping promote it. She would be pleased, I agreed. She always believed in your abilities, even when she worried about your priorities. Our relationship remained a work in progress, but the wall between us had definite breaks now, places where connection was possible again. The house itself had become more than just a residence. Following Martha's vision, I had designated part of it as a small museum, showcasing innovative bridge and building designs, open to engineering students and professionals by appointment. The workshop continued to function as the heart of the foundation's research and development efforts. One room remained exactly as Martha had created it, her personal study with its view of the apple orchard. I had found her diagnosis and treatment records in a locked drawer, learning the details of her final battle with cancer. Despite increasingly aggressive treatments, she had continued working on the foundation until weeks before her death, determined to complete as much as possible before passing the torch to me. In this room, I had placed a portrait of Martha that Thomas had provided from his collection of family photographs. It showed her in her 50s, smiling confidently at the camera, her eyes bright with intelligence and purpose. It was how I wanted to remember her, not as the young wife who had left me or the ex who had died before we could reconcile, but as the determined woman who had created an extraordinary legacy from the fragments of our shared past. On a crisp October afternoon, I sat on the restored porch watching golden leaves drift down from the maple trees lining the driveway. Barbara from the diner, now a friend, had stopped by with fresh pies and local gossip. Frank came regularly to check on the house and share coffee, no longer just a contractor but a trusted advisor. I had found a community here, something I had lacked in my solitary apartment in Portland. Millfield had embraced me as it had embraced Martha, appreciating my contributions to local projects and my efforts to continue what she had started. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant orange and pink, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. If Martha had left me a perfectly maintained, obviously valuable house, I might have simply sold it and returned to my quiet retirement. The apparent worthlessness of the inheritance had been crucial to its ultimate value. It had forced me to look deeper, to discover what lay beneath the surface. How often in life do we judge by appearances, missing the true worth of people, places, ideas? How many bridges remain unbuilt because we cannot see beyond conventional thinking? Martha had recognized this tendency in herself, in me, in our son. Her elaborate deception had been designed not just to protect the house and workshop, but to teach a profound lesson about value and perception. My phone chimed with a message from the construction supervisor at the university bridge site. They had completed the main support structure today. The innovative design that had been rejected 15 years ago was now standing, proving its viability. Attached was a photo of the graceful arch rising over the campus ravine, its form exactly as I had envisioned it so many years ago. I felt a surge of gratitude toward Martha for making this possible. Despite our failed marriage, despite the years of separation and misunderstanding, she had given me an extraordinary gift, the chance to see my most meaningful work realized, and the opportunity to build a legacy that would outlast both of us. The foundation was already establishing scholarships for engineering students, specializing in innovative bridge design. A lecture series bearing both our names would begin at 3 universities in the spring. My grandchildren were showing interest in engineering principles during their visits, asking questions about how bridges stood up and why certain designs worked better than others. These connections, between generations, between concepts, between past failure and future success, were themselves bridges of a sort. Martha had understood this, creating the ultimate bridge between her life and mine, spanning the gulf of our separation with this final, profound gift. As darkness fell, I turned on the porch lights and looked out at the property that had become my unexpected home. The house glowed warmly, no longer hiding its true nature behind a facade of neglect. Like the designs Martha had championed, it had revealed its full potential when given the chance to be seen as it truly was. Have you ever judged something or someone by appearances, only to discover hidden value beneath the surface. What treasures might be concealed in the overlooked corners of your own life? If this story touched you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more tales of unexpected discoveries and second chances. Leave a comment sharing something valuable you almost missed because of its outward appearance. Thank you for joining me on this journey of revelation. May you find bridges to your own unrealized dreams and the courage to cross them.